My name is Elise Vo. I'm 34, architect, preservationist, and apparently the only one in my family who remembers what a home is supposed to mean. It started with a text, not from my mother, not from my brother, from a college friend, Jamie. Did you see Ethan's post? Thought you two didn't talk anymore. I hadn't, not in years. Not since he left me with 5 packed boxes and a half-built bookshelf. Curious and admittedly a little reckless, I opened Instagram. Scrolled past brunch photos, engagement rings, sunset quotes, until I saw it. Ethan Park, smiling in a tailored navy suit, standing on the wraparound porch of a house I knew better than my own reflection. The Vo house, my grandmother's house, except it wasn't anymore. The wood was whitewashed. The wrought iron railing was gone, replaced with glass. And the banner hanging over the arch said, "Welcome to Vo Heritage Retreat, where legacy meets luxury." I stared, not out of disbelief, but recognition. That was the porch where I first learned how to read a compass. The same floorboards that creaked like a lullaby when I snuck downstairs for jasmine tea. The windows my grandmother cleaned every Sunday, humming old Vietnamese ballads. Gone, rebranded, filtered for engagement. The caption read, "So proud to unveil this incredible legacy with the Vo family. Bookings open this summer. Heritage Retreat Timeless Design." No mention of me, no tag, no call. Just a stolen memory turned marketing content. I closed the app, sat in silence, back pressed against the old drafting table in my Asheville apartment. Dust floated through the late afternoon sun. My hands didn't shake. I was too used to being erased. But this time it wasn't just personal, it was professional. Legal, because that house, the one they had painted, staged, and sold as a Vo family project, it was still in my name. I hadn't been back to Marietta in almost 6 years. Not since the funeral. Not since I stood alone in the rain, watching my family lower my grandmother into the ground. Without letting me speak, I had left quietly. No fight, no fanfare, just the belief that time would make space for truth. It didn't. On Monday, I called the Cobb County Records office. The clerk pulled the file within 2 minutes. "Owner of record," she repeated. "Still listed as Elise Vo. Title last transferred 12 years ago, from Lynn Tyatt Vo." My grandmother, I asked her to email the documents. She did. The deed came with a timestamp. Signed, notarized, sealed. Property taxes had been paid every year by a third-party trust under my name. I scrolled to the back page. There it was. Sole owner, Elise Vo. I leaned back in my chair, eyes closed. One hand resting on the unfinished sketch of a church I was drafting for a client in Charleston. They built a retreat. On my land, without consent, without a contract, without even a phone call. And Ethan, he didn't just share the project, he was the face of it. Director of Communications, Vo Heritage Development, LLC. I clicked on the website footer. His email was listed. And beneath it, a tagline I hadn't seen in a decade. "Design means nothing without memory." A quote from my grad school thesis. I laughed, not bitter, just tired. That night, I booked a rental car. Drove 7 hours back to Marietta. The roads were familiar. The town had changed. But the house, the bones were still mine. Except now, the shutters were faux colonial. The porch columns had been replaced with metal rods. And the garden. My grandmother's frangipani tree was gone, dug up, replaced by a fire pit with Adirondack chairs. I stepped closer. A woman in a linen blouse greeted me at the front steps. "You here for the tour?" she asked. I nodded. Inside, the walls were painted grayish. The kitchen smelled of curated candles and new wood. Photos lined the hallway, carefully selected, all staged. But then I saw it. A framed sketch. My sketch. Drawn in charcoal when I was 16, a corner of the house pre-restoration. A gift I made for my grandmother's birthday. It hung above the fireplace. No attribution, no signature, just a title plaque, artist unknown, original heritage rendering. I almost didn't recognize the man stepping out from the back sunroom. But his voice cut through time like glass. Elise. Ethan, still tall, still polished, still exactly the same. For a split second, he looked stunned. Then he smiled, like nothing had happened. "I didn't expect to see you," he said. "I'm sure you didn't," I replied. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. He gestured to the living room. "Look, I know it must be strange, but your family, your mom, Danny, they wanted to honor her legacy. We all did. You weren't reachable." I stared at him. "You didn't reach." He shifted. "You left, Elise, you left all of it. And they didn't ask, didn't check, didn't even hesitate." He hesitated now. "Okay, maybe we rushed it. But it turned out beautifully, didn't it?" I walked to the wall, touched my own sketch. "You used my name, my grandmother, my house, and you didn't think to ask if I still remembered it better than you ever could." He took a breath. "Elise, we can talk. Over dinner maybe, off the record." I turned, looked him in the eye. "No, Ethan, this isn't personal, it's legal." Then I walked out, and for the first time in years, I didn't look back. The next morning, I went to the county courthouse. Wore the same blazer I used in preservation hearings. Hair tied back, expression neutral, but inside, steel. I requested full access to all permits tied to 18 Maple Row. My grandmother's address. Now, Vo Heritage Retreat. It took the clerk 40 minutes to print everything. Zoning requests, construction permits, utility transfers. I sat in a side booth with my laptop open, cross-checking line by line. That's when I found it. Authorization for site modification. Signed, Elise Vo. Date, 2021. Notarized, yes, valid, no. The signature was crooked, digitized, pixelated. I tilted my head. I never signed it. In fact, I hadn't been in Georgia that entire year. I was in Italy restoring post-war structures with UNESCO. I had the passport stamps to prove it. So who signed it? I didn't need to ask. The answer was obvious. They hadn't expected me to come back. They thought I'd stay gone, quiet, absent, forgotten, and Ethan, he hadn't just stood beside it. He built a brand on it. Design means nothing without memory. He used my quote like a decoration without the cost of truth. By evening, I had assembled the file, titled it Unlawful Transfer, Vo Estate. Subfolders. Title Deed. Forged Authorization. Family Trust Papers. Construction Timeline. Press Materials. Screenshot. Instagram at Ethan Park PR. Caption, proud to carry on the Vo legacy. I emailed a copy to the county inspector, CC'd the historical board, and blind copied myself. Then I printed a physical version on ivory linen paper, bound in a leather folder. Gold embossed initials, EDV. That night, Ethan called. I didn't pick up. 10 minutes later, a text. I heard, let's talk. I wasn't part of that paperwork, I swear. Let's fix this. Together. Together, the word echoed like a trap door. I typed a reply. Paused, deleted it. Instead, I mailed the folder. Certified, signature required. Address to Vo Heritage Development, LLC. Inside, a note. To whom it may concern. The land upon which you stand is not yours. It never was. Kindly cease all operations or legal action will follow. Elise Vo. I waited, not out of hope, out of protocol. 2 days later, Ethan showed up. At my studio in Asheville, he looked tired, unshaven, a little off-brand. Like PR panic had bled into his morning routine. Elise, he started. I didn't know they forged it, I swear. I thought you were done with this place. I raised an eyebrow. This place, you mean the house, or the family, or the history you airbrushed for a brochure? He took a step forward. There's still a way we can fix this. We can make it right, publicly, split the ownership, give you design credit. Hell, I'll step down if that's what it takes. I folded my arms. You don't get to barter with something that wasn't yours to take. He was quiet then. Why now? Why come back after all this time? I stared at him, because it finally hurt enough to stop pretending I didn't care. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I walked past him, opened the door. Ethan, this isn't revenge, this is repair, and you don't get to be part of it. It was a Friday, warm breeze, blue skies. The kind of picture-perfect morning meant for press releases. The front lawn of the Vo Heritage Retreat was dressed like a wedding. Red carpet, gold-accented ribbon, string quartet rehearsing under the portico. News vans lined the street. City council members adjusted name tags. A drone buzzed overhead, capturing every polished angle. At 10:00 a.m., my mother stepped up to the podium. Pearl earrings, powder blue blazer. She smiled for the cameras like she'd rehearsed this moment in a mirror for years. Her voice rang out, "This house, this legacy belongs to all of us. To every family who believes in honoring the past while building the future. And to my daughter, Elise, who is with us in spirit." I was not. I stood a block away, behind the tinted window of a parked car. Watching, I didn't need to be center stage because the paperwork was. At 10:07 a.m., 2 city inspectors walked onto the lawn. They didn't smile. They didn't pose. They approached the project lead, whispered something into his ear, and handed him a folder. The mayor paused mid-sentence. The ribbon-cutting scissors froze midair. The music stopped. 5 seconds of perfect, expensive silence. Then the lead contractor stepped up to the mic. I'm sorry, folks. Due to an unresolved legal dispute regarding land ownership and permit authorization, this project is under immediate suspension. Gasps, murmurs. Phones came out, flashes, headlines forming in real time. My mother looked like someone had unplugged her. Ethan. He didn't move, just stared out at the crowd, jaw tight, eyes scanning for me. He found me, I didn't hide. Just stepped out of the car slowly, hair loose. No makeup, blazer, boots, nothing polished, just grounded. He walked toward me. "Elise," he started, breath shaky. I held up a hand. "I told you, this wasn't personal, it was legal." He stepped closer. "This doesn't have to be how it ends." I tilted my head. "Maybe for you, it's just beginning." He looked at me then, not as the girl he used to hold, not as the name on old blueprints, but as the wall he could no longer walk through. Then he said it, soft, almost regretful. "I never thought you'd really do it." And I smiled. That's the problem. None of you ever thought I would. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Voicemail, "Mom. Elise, what have you done?" "The entire town is talking. Your uncle's furious. We had reporters there. You've humiliated this family. Do you really hate us that much?" I didn't respond, because it wasn't hate, it was reclamation. A few hours later, another text. Ethan again. "Okay, you've made your point, let's fix this. I'll step aside, you can have the house, the brand, just can we talk?" I stared at the screen. Typed, paused, deleted. Instead, I sent a single attachment: legal revocation of access, effective immediately, subject to trespassing violations. I turned off my phone, stepped into the tool shed behind the house, opened my grandmother's old drawer, and pulled out a faded set of house keys tied together with red string. They'd taken the house from paper to profit. I was about to take it back to purpose. They thought I'd sell. A realtor called me the next morning, offered me 7 figures for the property, said I could walk away, richer than most architects ever dreamed to retire. I said no, because profit was never the wound. Silence was. Instead, I hired a local crew. No corporate names, no PR team. Just people who knew how to listen to old buildings and let them speak again. We stripped the villa coating off the wood, replaced metal rods with reclaimed pine, reinstalled the iron railing my grandmother once polished with orange oil. The fire pit was gone. The frangipani tree? I planted a new one from cuttings I'd kept in my freezer for a decade. It took root. So did I. Noah, the neighbor boy who once helped me build model houses in middle school, offered to help run workshops in the backyard. Woodworking for girls, drafting basics. Intro to preservation for kids who grew up thinking history was something you Google, not touch. We called it the Memory House. No brand, no logo. Just a door that stayed open. For the people who were never invited to begin with. One afternoon, a teenage girl from down the street lingered behind after class, held up her sketchpad, eyes wide. "Ms. Vo, is this how roof lines work?" I leaned over her shoulder, measured with my eye. "Not quite, but you're closer than you think." She smiled, corrected it, tried again, and just like that I saw it. The legacy they tried to erase. Alive again, in a hand that didn't need permission to hold the pencil. That evening I sat on the porch, sun dipping low, boots dusty, sketchbook open. A package had arrived that morning, no return address, but I knew the handwriting, my mother. Inside, a photo. One of those glossy, outdated family shots. Everyone posed stiffly. My face had been cropped out again, but this time I didn't feel hollow. I just placed the photo in a drawer, closed it. Above my desk now hangs a different image, me, standing in front of the rebuilt house. Flannel shirt, tool belt, hair tied, eyes forward, no one else in the frame, no one needed to be. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I had chosen myself and built something no one could take again. A legacy isn't what they leave you. It's what you choose to carry, even when you're the only one holding the weight.